Hey everyone, ready to talk about wedding reception venues?
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into this.
I feel like this is one of those decisions in the wedding planning process that can really make or break the whole day.
Totally. I mean, it sets the stage for everything.
We're not just going to give you a list of places you could book though.
Right.
We want to really help you figure out how to choose the right venue for your vision, your budget, your guest list.
That's really the key, isn't it?
Yeah, and what's interesting, going through all the research for this deep dive is
Mm.
it's how often couples, I think, get caught up in the way a venue looks in photos online.
Oh, for sure.
But they don't think about how it actually feels to be in that space.
Yeah, you can have a stunning ballroom,
Right.
but then you get there and it's like freezing cold.
Yeah, or the acoustics are terrible.
Oh,
If you're having a
right.
band or a DJ.
I think people forget the venue sets the tone for the whole celebration.
Yeah, that's so true.
And, you don't want a huge cavernous ballroom
Right.
if you're having like a small, intimate wedding.
It's going to feel really impersonal.
Exactly.
And on the flip side, like a garden
Uh,
could be gorgeous.
uh-huh.
But what happens if it rains?
Exactly.
You're totally at the mercy of Mother Nature
Gets right.
when you're planning an outdoor wedding.
And I think it's helpful to think about it in these kind of general categories.
Yeah, actually, I noticed the sources talked about three main types of venues:
Go on.
ballrooms, outdoor spaces, and then destination weddings.
Mm-hmm.
So let's break those down a little bit more.
Sure.
Ballrooms definitely have that classic elegance,
Absolutely.
and a lot of them offer these all-inclusive packages.
Yeah, that can be a huge time saver.
Right, it's like, boom, everything's taken care of,
Mm.
but sometimes they lack that personal touch.
Yeah, I can feel a little cookie cutter.
Right, like you're just plugging into a preset format.
Exactly.
Where it's an outdoor venue, like a vineyard,
Mm.
or a beach, has that kind of inherent wow factor.
Yeah, I've been to some amazing weddings on the beach.
Me too. I went to one on a cliff overlooking the ocean.
Oh, wow.
It was unforgettable.
But yeah, then you have the weather to worry about.
Right,
And
exactly.
need to rent more things like tents or heaters.
Which adds to the cost.
Yeah.
And then there's destination weddings, which are basically like a mini vacation for everyone.
Yeah, you're asking guests to travel.
Right, and potentially spend more money.
So that's a whole other layer of logistics.
Yeah, it is.
You really got to weigh those pros and cons.
No matter what type of venue you're kind of leaning towards, location is key, right?
Location.
Like you don't want your guests driving for hours.
Right. Especially if people are coming from out of town.
Exactly.
You want it to be convenient.
Yeah, near hotels,
Easy to get to from the airport.
public transportation,
Mm-hmm.
parking.
Big one.
Nobody wants to circle the block for an hour. And speaking of things that can make guests unhappy, accessibility, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Is the venue easy to navigate for folks with disabilities?
Mm.
Are the restrooms accessible?
All those details are important.
Because you want everyone to feel comfortable.
For sure.
And while we're talking about the guest experience, we also need to think about the flow of the event itself.
Yes.
Imagine your guests trying to squeeze through a narrow hallway to get to the restroom.
Or the bars miles away from where everyone's dancing.
Oh, that's annoying.
Right.
It's like when you go to a concert and the bar is at the opposite end of the venue.
So when you're touring these venues,
Yeah,
do a walkthrough, think about the flow.
I like that.
Yeah, picture yourself as a guest.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you go first? How do you get from cocktails to dinner to dancing?
Okay, so we've covered the vibe, the type of venue, the location, how it flows for guests.
Right.
What about availability?
Oh, that's another big one.
Because I've heard venues book up years in advance.
Yeah, especially the popular ones.
So what do you do if you have your heart set on a certain date?
Well, you might need to be flexible with the venue
Okay.
or consider a weekday wedding.
Oh, good point.
Weekdays are often more affordable too.
Ooh, that is a good tip, especially if you're on a tight budget.
Budget's probably the biggest thing on everyone's mind.
Oh, for sure.
And, a lot of couples don't realize what's included in that initial venue fee.
Yeah, because it's not just renting the space for the night.
Right.
It's all the other stuff that goes into it.
Tables, chairs, linens, sometimes even flatware.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the dance floor, lighting, sound systems, all of that can be extra.
Oh, and don't forget staffing fees.
That's right. You need people to set up, serve, and clean up.
All of that adds up.
It really does. So you got to get a detailed breakdown from the venue.
And don't be afraid to negotiate,
Exactly. Sometimes venues are willing to work with you.
especially if you're flexible with a date.
Or the day of the week.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in this first part.
Mm-hmm.
Different venue styles, location, guest convenience, flow of the event, and all those hidden costs.
What's next?
Next, we're going to dig into even more specific considerations.
Okay.
Catering options, the existing decor, and how to really make sure the venue aligns with your overall vision.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. We'll be right back after a quick break. Okay, so we're back and we're ready to dig into some more of these really specific venue considerations.
Yeah, things that people don't always think about up front.
Right, like existing decor.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
So I feel like that's a hidden cost that can really sneak up on you.
It definitely can.
Like you walk into this gorgeous venue and you're like, this is it.
Mm,
But then you realize the whole place is dicked out in a style that's so not you.
exactly. And then you have to spend extra money to cover it all up.
Right. Like if you're going for a minimalist modern wedding
Hmm.
and the venue is like dripping with chandeliers and velvet drapes,
Yeah, you're going to have to do a lot of work to transform the space.
and that costs money.
Big time.
So how do you avoid that kind of decor dilemma?
Well, first of all, don't just rely on photos.
Right. They could be deceiving.
Very deceiving.
You need to see it in person
Absolutely.
and really pay attention to the details.
Yeah. Does the existing decor complement your vision?
Or is it going to require a major overhaul?
Exactly.
Speaking of getting a feel for this space, what about catering?
Oh, yeah, that's another big decision.
Some venues have in-house catering,
Right.
and others let you bring your own.
So what are the pros and cons there?
Well, in-house catering can be really convenient.
For sure. They handle everything.
They usually have packages,
Mhm.
so you don't have to shop around for a separate caterer.
Makes things easier.
But you might not have as much flexibility with the menu.
Yeah, that's the trade-off.
So if you're a foodie couple with very specific tastes,
Right.
in-house might not be the best option.
But if you're more easygoing and you just want to keep things simple,
In-house could be perfect.
it really depends on your priorities.
Now, what about bringing your own caterer?
Now, that gives you a lot more control
Over the menu?
over the menu and the budget, but it
Yeah.
also means more work for you.
Right, more coordination.
You got to make sure the caterer has everything they need at the venue,
Like enough space.
kitchen access, all of that.
So it's kind of like a trade-off.
More control for more effort.
And speaking of trade-offs, there's another big one that comes up a lot in wedding planning.
What's that?
Balancing your vision with practical considerations.
Oh, yeah, that's the eternal struggle.
Right. You might have this amazing idea in your head,
Mm-hmm.
but then reality sets in.
Budget, guest list, logistics.
Exactly. And suddenly you have to make compromises.
It happens to everyone.
It's like you fall in love with this stunning castle in Tuscany,
Okay.
but then you realize it's way out of your budget, and half your guests wouldn't be able to make it.
So then what do you do?
I think the key is to figure out what's most important to you as a couple.
Yeah, what are your non-negotiables?
Right, and what are you willing to be flexible on?
Because you can't always have it all.
But you can make smart choices.
That create a celebration that feels authentically you.
I love that.
It's about finding that balance.
And I think that goes back to something we talked about earlier.
What's that?
Trusting your gut feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
You can have all the checklists and advice in the world,
Mm,
but ultimately, the right venue is going to feel right.
you'll just know.
It's like finding the perfect wedding dress.
You get that feeling.
And I think that's a great place to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
Catering options, decor dilemmas, trusting your intuition.
All the important stuff.
What are we going to talk about in the final part?
Well, we're going to share some tips on how to actually solidify that decision, how to make the most of your venue choice, and maybe even inspire you to think outside the box a little bit.
Ooh, I like that. Thinking outside the box.
We'll be right back.
Okay, so we're back. We've talked about all these different things to consider when choosing a wedding reception venue.
Yeah, lots of information.
But, how do you actually make that final decision?
Well, you've visited the venues, you've made your list of pros and cons, thought about your budget,
Right?
but honestly, sometimes you just got to trust your gut.
Oh, I love that. So you're saying, go with your feeling.
Exactly. When you walk into the right venue, you just know.
You get that feeling. Yeah.
You could be anything.
What kind of feeling?
Like maybe it's the way the light comes in through the windows,
Mhm.
or the history of the building, or even just the way the staff makes you feel.
Yeah, it should feel welcoming.
Exactly. Trust that feeling.
Okay, that makes sense. And I've also heard, sometimes it's helpful to get feedback from other people.
Yeah, like close friends or family members.
Yeah, people you trust.
Because sometimes they can see things you might have missed.
Yeah, like a fresh perspective.
But at the end of the day,
Yeah,
it's your wedding, you know?
right. It's your decision.
So make sure the choice feels right to you and your partner.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's say you've done all that. You've visited the venues, you've talked to people,
Mm-hmm.
you've listened to your gut feeling.
What's next?
Are you ready to sign the contract?
Almost. A couple things to double check.
Okay, like what?
First, Read that contract carefully.
Yeah.
Make sure you understand everything in it.
Especially the payment schedule.
And the cancellation policy, all that stuff.
Yeah, because those could be tricky.
It's always a good idea to have a lawyer look it over, too.
Oh, for sure. Better safe than sorry.
And second, don't be afraid to negotiate.
Ooh, that's a good point.
You never know. Sometimes venues are willing to work with you on the price.
Especially if you're flexible.
Like with the date, or maybe if you're getting married during the off-season.
Okay, so you found the perfect venue, the contract's all signed, you're officially booked.
Now the fun begins.
Right. Now you can start planning all the details.
The decor, the flowers, the music.
The food.
All of it.
It's like you have this blank canvas,
And you get to create a masterpiece.
and it all starts with the venue.
That's the foundation.
Speaking of starting points, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier.
What's that?
Thinking outside the box when it comes to venues.
Yes, don't be afraid to break the mold.
So we've talked about ballrooms and gardens.
But there are so many other options out there.
What are some examples?
Think about art galleries, museums, maybe even old libraries.
Oh, I've seen some amazing weddings in art galleries.
So chic.
Or industrial lofts. Those can be really cool too.
It's all about finding a space that reflects your personality.
Yeah, your wedding should be as unique as you are.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We hope you feel inspired and ready to find the wedding venue of your dreams.
And remember, this is just the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, enjoy the process.
Have fun planning your big day.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.